Hey everyone, so chapter 983 just came out, and this was a great chapter for a lot of reasons, mainly because, at least for me, it delivered on a lot of the things that I'd been hoping for a while, and it kind of resolved a lot of the smaller issues that I'd been feeling as they had arrived on Onigashima in the last several chapters, basically. So to start with, and I am going to get to Ulti and Yamato and all of that stuff, the things that you guys really want to hear about, that's going to be towards the end, timestamps are at the bottom if you're impatient, but there is a lot more to talk about in this chapter and a lot of other important things towards the beginning half of it. So starting with just Perospero heading over to Onigashima on his, his candy mobile, basically, his, the thing that allows him to walk across the surface of the water that we saw in Whole Cake Island. One, I really like this because I do think that basically it is getting a little odd that the Big Mom Pirates literally can't even get up the waterfall. They have no mechanism of doing that in a world with so many superpowers and everything like that. Like, if Luffy hadn't gone up via the carp and everything like that, I'm sure he would have been able to find, there's multiple ways you can think of for a lot of the characters that we know of to be able to climb a waterfall, basically. So it's not that it was never really a pressing thing in my mind that, why can't the Big Mom Pirates get up? But I do like the fact that we are seeing abilities being used effectively, abilities that we know that characters have that they should have no reason not to be able to implement. And to be honest, I'd forgotten that Perospero had this ability to be able to essentially walk on water, which is a very rare and powerful ability, or rare and useful ability for Devil Fruit users to have. But I like that he's using it here again. And one of the big things that I'm hoping for is that we get to see the other Big Mom Pirates be able to make their way up as well. What's interesting to me is the fact that Perospero is going by himself, so he's not bringing other people with him, even though we know he can. We saw him allow Big Mom to be able to walk across the ocean with his candy ability, right? So we know he can bring other Big Mom Pirates with him, but he's choosing not to. And I do think a lot of it might go back to that conversation that we saw between them all back on the ship after they had recovered from being knocked down the first time by King, which was a bit of, right now in the Beast Pirates, we are seeing a bit of a hierarchy struggle with, the Calamities and the Tobiropo in particular having a lot of tension, but then also the Gifters and Headliners wanting to move their way up the ranks, even the Numbers wanting to get to Tobiropo rank as well. So there's a lot of back and forth tension going on among the Beast Pirates, but with the Big Mom Pirates, we already did see that there is a bit of a succession discussion going on with Perospero wanting to become the new captain versus others vouching for Katakuri, etc., etc. And obviously that's not going to be the case now because they all know that Big Mom is alive and well, but we know that there is tension among that family. And so the fact that Perospero seems to be going on his own, I think does say a lot to me. Maybe it is just the fact that once the ship fell down, they all got separated, as we know that Big Mom got separated from the crew the first time that the ship fell down. But I do think it is entirely possible that Perospero just chose to go on his own, because he's determined to kind of take the reins and put a stop to this on his own. At the same time, I don't think that Perospero, I would much rather see a character like Smoothie be able to make her way over there, a character that would make a higher impact. Not to say that Perospero isn't strong. We know he's probably pretty strong, but I do want to see the characters that we haven't gotten to see shine as much get to shine. I think Smoothie would be a much more interesting addition to Whole Cake Island. But that is partly why I'm hoping that at least what this is a hint at is that we're going to be able to get to see the other Big Mom Pirates make their way up through their own means, like Daifuku may be making use of his genie. We know that Flampe can fly. Smoothie, I would love to see what her ability allows her to do, and if it does allow her to climb the waterfall herself, basically. So I would love to see the Big Mom Pirates make their way individually over there. I think it is odd that only Perospero is going. Or maybe it's just something as simple as Oda just wants one of the Big Mom Pirates to make an appearance there. Alright, so moving on from there, we get to the one section of the chapter that I didn't really like. Or it's not even I didn't like this part of the chapter, it's more so that it's carrying over from a plot thread from the previous chapter that I didn't particularly care for, which was Big Mom chasing Usopp and Chopper. And Big Mom chasing Usopp and Chopper, I don't even want to get into it too much here because Big Mom's such a touchy subject. Some people think that she's being treated poorly, some people think that the gags that she's being written are totally consistent with what her character was before, and that it doesn't change really anything about how we should perceive her character. I think it's just worth its own video because I think it is a longer discussion where I just want to get all my thoughts out more clearly and comprehensively. At least right here, I'll say that I did not like last chapter's gag, and it's not because I don't think Big Mom shouldn't have gags. I'll just say that there's a difference between how she's been portrayed and the gags that she had in Whole Cake Island versus the gags she's starting to have in Wano. And the difference is that the gags in Wano seem to make her seem less competent. overall, or less intimidating, or less of a force, basically. And that was not the case in Whole Cake Island. I think in Whole Cake Island, Oda played it perfectly, where he was able to insert this gag of her being, childlike, kind of goofier, sillier, etc., without taking anything away from her intimidation factor, her strength, the presence that she brought to the story every time that she was on page. Right? I just don't think that that's there anymore quite as much. I don't think that that's, permanent, that this is a permanent shift. I think Oda could very easily, even by the end of this Onigashima segment, basically bring her back to what she felt like in Whole Cake Island. But I do think that something has changed. And it's similar to, in my Sanji video, I talked a lot about how Sanji's gag had fundamentally changed from what it was pre-time skip to what it is post-time skip. And I think that I think it warrants a video to explain how I see what Big Mom's gag was before and what her character concept was for all of Whole Cake Island, and how it seems to be shifting somewhat in Wano. So anyway, that aside, I did not like that plot thread from the previous chapter. And this chapter, I'm glad that that little plot thread ended. However, I will say that basically Usopp and Chopper, they seem to have had some sort of an incident where they both took a blow from Big Mom that was off-screen, and then Big Mom left. The other reason I don't really like this moment is because it goes back to a little bit more of what we've been seeing throughout all of Act 2, which was that Oda is handling more plot lines and storylines and scenes than ever before. More characters, more events going on all at once. And it was clear at least throughout Act 2 that there were moments that Oda realized that he had to cut a scene from the story. A scene that even could have been covered in a page or a panel or something like that. And it was always somewhat minor stuff, and this is a minor moment too. But to me, this was, it's clearly going back to that, where it's like the more the story is branching out and the more plot lines and scenes we're getting, Oda's having to realize that, I planned out these beats of the plot for, Usopp and Chopper, but because I have to fit the story perfectly into lots of 20-page segments for chapters, the reality is, okay, maybe I can, if I'm picking a scene to cut, I guess I can cut this little scene and just have Usopp and Chopper narrate what happened with Big Mom to shorten down the time, basically. And that happened a lot throughout Act 2, where we basically got a bit of narration of a scene that we would feel like normally we would have gotten, basically. So to me, this was just, it just feels a little weird the way that Oda did it, which is just narrating this incident that happened with Big Mom. And yes, I know it's a minor incident, but it's the fact that it's following a lot of times that this happened in Act 2 that I can kind of tell that, okay, something was off-screen for the purposes of time, probably not because Oda had planned to off-screen it in the first place. So there's that. Fact is, Big Mom got diverted. She's going after Prometheus and Zeus, etc. And I do actually I think people are going to jump a little bit on this, but I do actually first of all, I'll say that I like Big Mom going back to being a little more competent with giving life to the sandals and the umbrella and such. I'm very interested in seeing what happens with this. Could we see a flying Big Mom next chapter? I don't know if she's going to use the umbrella to fly around or something like that, if that's even possible. Maybe the sandals, I don't know how the sandals help her in some way, maybe to run faster or something like that. But I do like the shift between Looney Tunes style Big Mom that we had last chapter, where it seemed like she was not much different than maybe a particularly big gifter chasing after Usopp and Chopper, to this chapter where it seems like, she's a very capable character with a lot of abilities that are going to be very tough to deal with for the Straw Hat crew. The other thing I like in this moment was basically that the Straw Hat, okay, this is going to be a little controversial, but I guess I actually liked what Oda did for Sanji in this chapter, or at least I think I'm going to like it, which is basically that, yes, Oda did make the joke about Sanji going back for the prostitutes, or that he won't abandon the prostitutes, but whereas Nami's reaction was to play this as a gag, as though, of course, Sanji, he's going back for the prostitutes, he's a perv, obviously. The way Oda drew the panel seems to indicate, to me at least, that it's not, Sanji's perv side coming out here. It is his more noble, chivalrous side, because this is not Sanji drawn with, hard eyes or drool or a nosebleed or anything like that. The way Sanji was drawn in that panel was pretty normal, and in fact, like, it does kind of make him look good, basically. I do think that Oda chose to use Nanji's reaction, Nanji's reaction, I'm not shipping anyone here, but Nami's reaction, just to spin it as a quick gag, basically, but I do think that we are going to get a more legitimate storyline out of this, and that Sanji's intentions here were more, kind-hearted or coming from a good place. Because the reality is that, look, prostitutes on Onigashima, like, working basically in a brothel for Kaido, I would bet a lot of them may not be there, by their own will. I would bet that maybe a lot of them would like to get out of there. So, let's see. I wonder if Sanji is actually interested in legitimately finding a lot of these prostitutes to get them out of there. I think that would be a good storyline for him. And I would add that partly this is because of the tone shift that we are seeing in general between, like, Luffy's attitude, Zoro's attitude, etc. I think things just in general becoming a little more serious, that I think it's less likely that Sanji is being played for a gag right here. I think it's more likely that this is shifting towards a potentially more serious Sanji with a better storyline, which I really look forward to. Not to mention just the fact that the crew repeatedly were mentioning, like both Usopp and Chopper and Nami and such were mentioning that, like, oh no, Big Mom's after us. Where's Sanji? Sanji will be able to help. Obviously, we know that, look, like, even Luffy got one-shotted by Kaido. Like, it's not like I trust really any of the Straw Hats right now to be able to legitimately stop or help against a Yonko. But, like, the fact that they are like, mentioning Sanji is like, you know what, if Sanji were here, he would be able to help in some way. Like, they feel safer with Sanji around. I think that says a lot for his character. And it's just the crew giving him respect, basically. It's like, if we need a guy in, like, this situation, Sanji would be a really good guy to come in and basically do something to be able to help us in this situation. So I think that is, just in general, I think if you're a Sanji fan, you should look at this chapter with a more positive attitude, I believe. And then that, speaking of the tone shift and everything like that, I do think that the next part of the chapter with Zoro and Kid, I think Zoro in particular in the conversation he had with the gifters was pretty cool. Because, okay, I know we've had lots and lots of jokes about the gifters, and, Kaido has put in so much time and investment and, like, pinned so many of his dreams on basically building an army of, like, soldiers that are basically slightly stronger fodder. At least that's been our impression of the gifters so far. But look, like, the reality is that we're seeing right now, the gifters, it's not just, like, yes, an individual gifter, if you took, like, a Sheep's Head or a Hold'em or whatever, and I know they're headliners, so they're stronger than the average gifter, but, like, the gifters that we saw even, in the Udon prison mine and such, yes, individually, they're not a big deal, but it's like, if you stack them on top of each other in, like, large numbers, it's a totally different ballgame, right? So it's not even like, it's like, quantity versus quality, but the quantity is also quality, if that makes sense. I guess that doesn't make sense, but basically it's like, the large number of gifters that he has, and the fact that they are significantly stronger than the average soldier, to the point that, like, look, if you put Zoro up against a big crowd of gifters, even Zoro is going to have trouble. He's not just going to wash all of these guys. I think that is pretty significant. That says a lot. And the one thing that I would say that's also really interesting is the fact that they seem to be saying that they were all former captains who wanted to be Pirate King. This is one of my favorite, like, little plot threads that's been kind of building throughout the whole Wano arc, and I'm really hoping that, like, this becomes more and more of a big deal as Onigashima in particular progresses. But the fact that a big deal is being made throughout this arc of the idea of, like, what it takes to be a king, what it takes to kind of, like, have that will to rise above, going all the way back to, like, Luffy's conversation with Kaido in the very first act of Wano. Like, there's too many conquerors running around, there's not enough room, etc., etc. Like, Luffy's a dime a dozen in terms of people who claim that they want to be Pirate King. Going back even to what Kaido told Kid about little pirate games and stuff like that. Like, this is basically the time that we're going to start seeing, what it actually takes to become a Pirate King. Because this is the arc that they're actually intending to take down an Emperor of the Sea and kind of climb that ladder several rungs higher and actually put themselves in position to become Pirate King. And I think it's really interesting that this arc first of all, it's established that Kaido is a character who takes strong characters, breaks their wills, and makes them subordinates. So the fact that his entire army is seemingly made out of characters like that, made up of characters like that, I think that has a lot of interesting potential for what Luffy and Kid storylines could be going down the rest of this arc. Like, Kaido is definitely going to... I don't think that Udon was his only attempt to make Luffy a subordinate. I definitely think that Luffy's will is going to be tested in other ways, especially if the Onigashima raid ends in failure and such. So I think just getting this as a teaser and getting it established that Kaido's entire army, all of the significant people in his army, etc., are basically made up of people who also wanted to be Pirate King, had their wills broken by Kaido, and then were like forced into his service basically. And now they've basically been brainwashed to the point that like they're all for Kaido becoming Pirate King and they don't see it any other way. They're like, forget our dreams. You know, we've seen the truth. Even Appu, for example, like Appu, who was a significant worst generation figure, he's been press gang basically into, the Kaido cult. I guess the cult of Kaido, right? So I think that this is just a really interesting pirate group dynamic that they've built up here. And like you see that through the crew itself, right? It makes sense that this is a crew where everybody's vying for promotions, essentially. Everybody's trying to climb up that ladder higher and higher. Everybody's fighting for that spot in the hierarchy because this is a crew made up of a bunch of captains that have been forced together, right? Like, they're all big, ambitious pirates in their own way. They've just been forced to become subordinates to one guy, and so naturally they're going to compete with each other and stuff, but Kaido's going to stay, like, solid as a rock pretty much at the top while everybody tries to, like, push and pull on this ladder below him. I think that's just a really interesting dynamic. I hope we get to see more and more of this as we go along. But yeah, I really like seeing that. And again, the fact that Zoro does seem to be having trouble with these guys, it makes sense if they were all former, New World captains or whatever, and now they're gifters. The Kid scene, I don't have much to say on that. And just for the sake of time, let's get to Luffy versus Ulti. I really, really liked this scene. I think this was the first really good action sequence we've gotten in a long while. I'm trying to think back. I think this is the first really good action sequence we've gotten in a long while. Maybe since Sanji versus Page 1, if you can count it as that. But yeah, just in general. Okay, first of all, what do I talk about first? Let's talk about Luffy first, okay? This is the Luffy that I've really, really wanted to see. And I knew that we would get it when the time came, but I'm really happy that the time is now, if that makes sense. So this is something, again, I mentioned that there are things in this chapter that I've wanted to see. Luffy's actions in this chapter were definitely, or not his actions even, I guess a combination of his actions and the way he's speaking. The way he's speaking is so dramatically different from what it was, throughout most of Act 2, for example. Or even as they're sailing towards Onigashima at the start of Act 3, right? Like a lot of the lighthearted banter, etc., etc. It's just a totally different Luffy. It started, honestly, not even this chapter. It started from the previous chapter, end of 982, when he runs into Ulti. And he's basically saying, like, she's like, who the hell are you? And Luffy's like, I should ask you the same thing, something along those lines. Like, first of all, that feels like a little sharper, more serious dialogue than Luffy would normally say. Like, and that just speaks a lot to the shift in attitude of what he's feeling right now. And then this chapter, just a lot of the dialogue that he was saying throughout the chapter, it really did feel sharper and more mature and like more level-headed than what you would normally see from Luffy dialogue. Just starting from basically, even just starting from the start of the chapter, yes, it's a funny gag that, like, I thought it was a funny visual gag that Ulti had, like, sledded down that entire flight of stairs on Page 1. But she's snapping at Luffy, like, what did you do to Peipei or whatever? And, Luffy right there, like, he's being the straight man. Like, he's actually saying, like, pretty straightforwardly, like, it looks like you did that yourself, basically, right? There's no hint of a joke or anything like that. That is, like, it's really minor, but it's just a more level-headed, like, normal person sort of thing for Luffy to say. And then everything as that chapter progresses, which was basically, like, I'm not going to underestimate you anymore. I know that, like, I'm in a Yonko's empire, etc. I should stop underestimating you guys. Then the following line where, like, Ulti's grabbed him and stuff, and, like, Luffy's commenting that, she's pretty strong. She's saying, I'm going to do whatever to you. Luffy's saying, yeah, not happening, gear forth. Like, this is all just generally... I guess I've been using the word sharper, but that's what it feels. Like, it feels like more, like, certain, more serious, more generally mature way of speaking, and, like more capable... Like, it just feels like a more coming from a more capable, defined place from within Luffy, rather than his usual attitude of, like, oh, whoops, this happened, like, uh-oh, this is happening, kind of. Like, you see that happen a lot when Luffy's kind of caught off guard, or things are, like, new things are happening to him, and he's kind of, like, thrown for a bit of a loop. And then he'll get more serious as time goes on. But, like, this whole bit of dialogue just seems, like, more like Luffy the captain, Luffy who's kind of in charge, and, like, kind of is taking control of the situation, and isn't letting things throw him. So I really like that side of Luffy, and I'm very excited by the fact that we're probably going to be seeing this Luffy for probably the rest of the Onigashima raid, hopefully. So that's Luffy's end. But then the other side, well, maybe not because of what happened at the end, so he might be in a bit more of a light mood when he's meeting a new friend, right? But we'll talk about that in a second. And then with Ulti, I think that Oda handled this perfectly, because you know that people are going to get upset with the power scaling and stuff like that. I'll start by saying that I like Ulti's character a lot here. Very aggressive, very sharp, more so than what you see from, like, Oda's normal female characters. I don't think we've had a female character quite like Ulti before. Like, even strong female characters in One Piece, they are written a bit more like they're elegant, or they're mature, or they're, like, smug or something like that. Ulti is just, like, a really brash, aggressive, angry female character, and she's strong to back it up. Like, between her and Page One, it's clear who's in charge. So I do like that side of her. And it did feel interesting that, like, in her and Luffy's interaction, she seemed like the more immature one, whereas Luffy seemed like the more mature one, which is very, very rare. So Ulti, I think, very unique character type for One Piece. I'm excited to see more of her. So just in general, I liked that, and I like the fact that she's, the way that she quickly acknowledged that, I'm not going to underestimate Luffy the way a lot of people do, because just from one hit, she knew that he's stronger than most opponents that she would probably just, like, wreck with a headbutt, basically. So even the fact that she's snapping angrily, like, then why the hell is his haki, like, why the hell can I still sense his haki and stuff like that? I think that says a lot. I just think generally she seems like, personality-wise, really cool for a female character, and she's not stupid, despite what it seems like. So that combination, I think she is... I don't know. I have to see more of the Tobiropo to say who's my favorite. So far, I think, like, Ulti or Who's Who, basically, is where I'm at. And that includes X-Drake. I've never been a big X-Drake fan, but, maybe he'll grow on me as time goes on. So that's definitely props for her character, but then also in terms of how Oda handled her strength, and I guess Page One's strength over the course of this, because there's a lot of ways that, Oda could have pissed people off. I think to start with the fact that basically Ulti did win the headbutt with Luffy. I think that's good, because it's important to establish, like, where the Tobiropo are at right now. How do I avoid getting too much into power scaling, I guess, here? I'll say where the Tobiropo are at right now, especially considering Ulti might be one of the stronger members, or at least above Page One. I think they should definitely be able to give Luffy some trouble in base form, and headbutts are her specialty, clearly. So she should be able to win a headbutt with Luffy, in my opinion. Especially because we can assume Luffy wasn't using any sort of advanced armament haki right there, right? Just seemed like a straightforward clash. So I like the fact that she's able to win a headbutt. And what was established pretty much is that, okay, like, once Luffy gets serious, he is clearly going to be above these two, I would like to see him use Future Sight. He didn't. I felt like he was calm in this situation. Like, at what point is he not going... Like, how calm does he need to be, basically? Because he seemed pretty damn calm coming out of that hole. I don't know why he didn't have Future Sight on when Ulti grabbed him from behind. So, that's a question mark for me still. But besides that, the rest of the way that this interaction went was pretty good, in my opinion. Ulti gets the better of him in a headbutt. When Luffy gets serious, he is clearly faster than both of them. I won't say he one-shotted Page One, but at least Luffy seemingly taking out Page One with a elephant gun. Whether he's taken out or not, I don't know. But Luffy quickly got the better of Page One. That's consistent, I guess, with what we saw from Sanji. which, you know, this actually also does make Sanji look good-ish in a way too, because, you know, Luffy had to use Elephant Gun on page 1. Sanji was able to not necessarily take page 1 out, but he was kicking page 1 in Spinosaurus form around pretty easily with kicks. It was only when page 1 went to hybrid form that Sanji, you know, had a bit more of a fight on his hands. But, like, yeah, just the fact that, you know, we see kind of consistent portrayal between how Luffy and Sanji were treating page 1. And then also the fact that, you know, it's still that there are 2 of them. So even if Luffy's stronger than either of them individually, even in his base form, Ulti can still grab him from behind or whatever. Like, he can't just dispose of both of them that easily. And I'd say that, like, you know, even though Luffy was saying Gear 4th at the end, that still doesn't mean that Luffy even needed Gear 4th, right? Because the fact is, from what we saw with the ship scene earlier on, as they're approaching Onigashima, when Luffy, Kid, and Law attacked that ship, Luffy can use Gear 4th a lot more easily and casually now. It's kind of like, if you go back to pre-time skip, yeah, initially he was only using Gear 2nd when he really needed it, like against Lucci. Then later on, it took a while before he used it against Moria. But then once we got to Sabaody, and from Sabaody through till the basically end of Marineford, Luffy was using Gear 2nd like pretty much all the time in times that he really didn't need it. Like, he didn't need it against Hanyabo by any means, but it just made it quicker. So basically, I think it was clear on all sides, kind of good showings on all sides. Page 1, clearly not really a problem for Luffy whatsoever. Ulti, kind of a problem for Luffy, but like, he would still definitely have beaten her without Gear 4th. And also establishes that Ulti is still somewhat strong and can give Luffy some trouble in base form. And finally, it establishes that, like, Luffy can really just use Gear 4th whenever he wants now if he wants to finish a fight pretty quickly, and it's not going to cost him too much. So I liked all of that. Last thing that I'll say is Yamato. I really don't know what to say or what to think with Yamato, because it just raises. I did not expect him to necessarily be an ally, but there's a lot of things that we can kind of take away from this. So one, the fact that he's very strong and he's clearly Kaido's son. I love the fact that Oda opened with him having that moment that very clearly parallels Kaido hitting Luffy with the Thunder Bagua attack, or Divine Thunder, at least as I remember it, with a very similar visual to represent it. So yeah, it's very clearly Kaido Jr. I like that. He's obviously strong. If I had to guess right now, I'd say he's like Calamity level or something like that. And the Tobiropo did hint at that, basically by the fact that I think even Who's Who was saying, like, oh, we have to bring in Yamato. That's going to be like quite a tough challenge or something like that. So, you know, if I had to give my first guess, I'd say, okay, maybe he's Calamity level. He one-shotted one of the Tobiropo. Seems about right. Okay, so I like that. Seems strong. He's not like a weakling like some people were worried about or whatever. But the fact he's going to be on the ally side really surprises me, because I was thinking that we do need some more, I don't know, some more tough guys on the bad guy side just to provide even more matchups and stuff like that. So I'm really interested in, like, I don't know, like, people were even saying stuff like Yamato and Momo might have an antagonistic relationship. That would have been really cool. Although, you know, maybe not like a physical fighting relationship, obviously, because Momo's a kid. But I'm just surprised that we just seem to have randomly gotten like a really strong ally out of nowhere, and I don't know where the story is going to take him. Also, just a few interesting observations about him. The fact that, one, he's got the thing on his back, that's basically what Odin always had on his back, right? Like that tied bow, that pretzel bow. I don't really know if that's like the norm. Maybe it's not like Odin exclusive, I guess, because I think Sentomaru also had that, or I might be remembering wrong. So maybe I shouldn't read into that too much. Like, there's a small part of me that's like weirdly worried that it is Odin, and that like Kaido kidnapped him and then like brainwashed him, or like Odin survived or some crazy stuff or something like that, and then Kaido, that'd be too weird. I don't think that's possible. And oh man, that just reminded me of the cover story and like how worried I am now about characters not actually being dead. This is easily my least favorite cover story of all time. This is the worst cover story of all time. You guys don't know how much I hate the fact that Pound is alive. Literally, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like, the amount of praise I gave Oda for Pound in like my whole cake analysis video, like the amount of respect I had for like how he did that character so much, how he did so much for that character in that one chapter. It's through the, I don't even know what to, okay, I'm just gonna ignore that. I don't want to like derail what I'm talking about here. But man, This is the worst cover story of all time, one of the worst writing decisions by Oda of all time, in my opinion. Anyway, so ignoring Pound, my point is that I can't rule anything out. Maybe Odin is alive. In that case, that would be probably the worst writing decision by Oda in all One Piece history, like far outstrips Pell, for sure. But it's probably not Odin, so let's not worry about that. I don't know why I'm worried about that. Again, it's just because of the bow thing. I don't know. So there's that. Interesting to me. The other thing is the fact that he has handcuffs on, or he was clearly chained up a little while ago. So I really don't know. Like, he's clearly being mistreated by Kaido or, like, kept away in a certain way. But at the same time, Kaido wanted him to come out to the banquet and such. So it's not as though, you know, he's just a prisoner all the time. He just seems to be kept under some sort of heavy supervision, I guess. And the fact that, like, Kaido's having to send out people to go retrieve him, that suggests a lot, you know? Like, is this like a regular occurrence or something like this? That, like, Yamato went missing, he tried to run away from home. Okay, send out the search party to go bring him back, put him back in his cell. I don't know. So very interesting. I wonder what this character is going to show us about Kaido himself, because that relationship is going to tell us a lot about Kaido. And the really interesting thing is, like, I'm wondering why he has been waiting for Luffy for so long. Like, what does that actually mean? Has he literally been waiting for Luffy for a long, long time? Or has he just recently heard about him, like, attempting to raid Onigashima? And maybe that's one of the reasons that he attempted to break out. I don't know. I think the Viz translation will help a lot more, but I'm impatient and I don't wait for the Viz translation, as are you guys, otherwise you wouldn't be watching this video. So anyway, a lot of great stuff in this chapter, a lot of great interactions, a lot of things that were delivered on, and I'm really looking forward to next chapter and trying to figure out what the hell is up with Yamato. I do hope he gets unmasked next chapter. If you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, share, and subscribe, and catch me next week for more videos. Talk to y'all later.